to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello and welcome to ASEAN in Focus. Joining me today is from our EBC Thailand Bureau. Hello, Esther.
Hi, I'm Esther Adanga from EBC Thailand Bureau, giving you the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines.
Unang-una po, no, kapag...
The samples of 74 overseas travelers positive for coronavirus disease are being examined at the Philippine Genome Center and the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine to detect the new variant of coronavirus, which is reported to be more contagious.
Alam niyo po,
The validation result for saliva-based COVID-19 testing might be out this or next week. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Vivencio Dizon said in a palace briefing Tuesday.
Vietnam suspended flights from countries with cases of new COVID-19 variants.
Workers came to Vermont in British Columbia.
Overseas Filipino workers in Canada stay positive by sharing this fight song challenge.
They made some vlogs.
First, here in the Philippines, the samples of 74 overseas travelers positive for COVID-19 are being examined at the Philippine Genome Center at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine to detect the new variant of coronavirus, which is reported to be more contagious. In a palace briefing on Tuesday, National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Vivencio Dizon said out of the 3,684 individuals who returned to the Philippines between December 22 to 2020, December 22 last year to January 3 this year, some 74 were tested positive for COVID-19. This translates to a positivity rate of 2%. And despite 3,610 individuals being negative for the disease, Dizon also said they still need to be quarantined for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Mr. Dizon also said there are 120 hotels in the country accredited to host travelers for their mandatory quarantine. And those 2- and 3-star hotels are for free, while those who will opt for 4- and 5-star hotels shall shoulder their accommodation expenses. Among the free hotels are Nice Hotel in Caloocan City, Summit Ridge in Tagaytay, Canyon Cove in Batangas, and Apollonia Royal Hotel in Pampanga. Hotels at expense of travelers include Ascot and Discovery Primea in Makati City, Conrad Hotel in Pasay City, Seda Vertis North in Quezon City, and Quest Hotel in Tagaytay. Let's listen in.
Unang-una po, no, kapag ang ating mga kababayan ay pauwi, ini-encourage na natin sila na mag-pre-book kung gusto nilang mag-pre-book na ng hotel. Pagdating po nila sa Pilipinas, sila po ay automatically isa-swab test sa airport upon entry. Yung pong mga specimen nila ay dadalhin po sa ating mga laboratorio at itetest. Ngayon po, on average, 24 hours, sometimes even less na lang po ang turnaround time natin for test results. Pagdating po nila, tatanungin po sila ng ating one-stop shop sa mga airports natin kung sila ay meron ng hotel. Kung sila po ay wala, papipiliin po sila kung gusto nila yung libreng hotel. May i-assign po na hotel sa kanila base sa mga hotels na nakuha na ng ating gobyerno para sa mga ating returning Filipinos at OFWs. Yun po ay libre. Pero kung gusto po nila ng mas magandang accommodation, kailangan po silang pumili sa list of accredited hotels ng ating Bureau of Quarantine at doon po sila kailangan magbayad ng buo. Para po sa transportation, hindi po sila pwedeng pumunta on their own. Either magpo-provide po ng transportation ang ating authorities sa airport or kung sila po ay pre-booked at merong na-arrange sa kanila, papayagan naman po silang gumamit ng hotel-provided shuttle.
Dizon added the government has to implement the mandatory 14-day quarantine for overseas travelers arriving in the country to prevent the entry of the new COVID variant. The government also imposed temporary travel restrictions from travelers from 21 countries now, and these include the United Kingdom, Denmark, Ireland, Japan, Australia, Israel, the Netherlands, Hong Kong, Switzerland, France, the US, Iceland, Italy, Lebanon, Singapore, Sweden, South Korea, South Africa, Canada, Spain, and Germany.
The validation result for saliva-based COVID-19 testing might be out this week or next week. National Task Force Against COVID-19 Deputy Chief Implementer Vivencio Dizon said in a palace briefing Tuesday. Dizon, who is also the testing czar, said the validation for saliva-based COVID-19 testing started last year with the first application coming from the Philippine Red Cross. Let's watch this.
Alam niyo po, last year pa po yan sinubmit sa ating mga regulatory agencies para i-approve ang ating at i-validate itong prosesong ito. Nauna na po dyan ang application ng Philippine Red Cross at alam naman po natin na napakalaki po na naging tulong nila sa testing natin at naunang po nilang sinubmit yan. And sana po, alam ko po ito'y ongoing ang validation, pero sana po lalo na sinabi na ng ating Pangulo na dapat bilisan na natin ang validation ito, sana po bilisan na po ng ating regulatory agencies at validation agencies under the Department of Health ang pagpapalabas ng guidelines dito para magamit na natin itong saliva test. Dahil alam nyo, Spokeshari, tama po ang ating mahal na Pangulo, hindi po biro ang ma-PCR test at ma-swab ng ilang beses. Masakit po yan, very invasive. Tayo po mismo, ako po mismo, halos mahigit 30 na akong PCR test at hindi po siya komportable at may kasakitan po yan at sana napakalaki po ng maitutulang ng saliva test. So sana bilisan na natin na mapalabas ito and sana sa loob ng linggong to, sa susunod na linggo ay lumabas na.
Meanwhile, the DOH already approved the guideline for pooled testing. Under the guidelines, Dizon said the pooled testing should be a pool of 5. This means 5 specimens will be sharing one polymerase chain reaction kit, which will cut the cost for the PCR test. Meanwhile, more than 6.83 million PCR tests for COVID-19 were already done in the country. Dizon said the country will breach the 10 million mark by the first quarter of the year.
President Duterte has ordered the state-run Philippine Health Insurance Corporation, or PhilHealth, to defer the scheduled increase in the contribution rates this year. In a public address late Monday night, the President told PhilHealth CEO and President Dante Gueran to suspend the contribution hike to lessen the burden of Filipinos affected by the pandemic. Let's listen in.
We come now to the status PhilHealth. There is a move to increase the contribution ng mga members. At this time of our life, may I just suggest to the PhilHealth chairman, si Dante Gueran, at yung si lahat na. Isang tao lang kailangan ko sabihan dyan. Huwag muna ngayon. No increase in contributions. I will look for the money to fill it up. Maghanap tayo ng pera. Anyway, that is the job of the government to make it easy for everybody at this time, I saved our lives.
Last week, PhilHealth announced its plan to push through with a scheduled contribution rate adjustment this year to ensure that sufficient funding for its healthcare beneficiaries will be enough. The premium is supposed to increase 3.50% of monthly basic salary from the current 3%, which means that those
Contribution
earning below
ng mga
10,000 pesos will have a fixed contribution of 350 pesos a month starting January this year, while those earning 70,000 and higher per month will pay a fixed rate of 2,450 pesos monthly. Under the UHC law, the premium rate shall increase to increments of 0.5% every year starting 2021 until it reaches 5% in 2025.
Lahat na. Isang tao lang kailangan.
The head of the World Health Organization stressed that the novel coronavirus is still a major public health crisis and it is a race to save lives, livelihoods, and end this pandemic. The Director General said the medical personnel and people with health problems must be the first to be vaccinated against the novel coronavirus. Let's watch this.
Speaking to you from WHO headquarters in Geneva, and to break chains of transmission, we must identify and find those who are infected, provide the care they need, and help them truly isolate safely. We are in a race to prevent infections, bring cases down, protect health systems, and save lives, while rolling out highly effective and safe vaccines to high-risk populations. This is not easy. These are the hard miles we must tread together. But if we act together, we can win both races and get ahead of the virus, while also limiting the opportunity for the virus to mutate further and threaten the health tools we currently have. 1 year on from WHO issuing its first disease outbreak news report about this virus, more than 30 countries have started vaccinating their high-risk populations with various COVID-19 vaccines. The scientific community has set a new standard for vaccine development. Now, the international community must set a new standard for access. We owe it morally to health workers everywhere who have been fighting this pandemic around the clock for the best part of a year, to vaccinate them all as soon as possible. People must come first over short-term profits. It's in countries' self-interest to shun vaccine nationalism. Vaccinating health workers and those at high risk of serious disease is the fastest way to stabilize health systems, ensure all essential health services are up and running, and that a truly global economic recovery can take place.
OCHIP addressed all countries with a reminder concerning their obligations to provide fair access to vaccines around the world and asked the pharmaceutical companies to step up medical supplies.
Vietnam has jailed 3 pro-democracy bloggers ahead of the Communist government's Party Congress. To give us an update on that report, here's Eliana Faith Sebastian joining us from Vietnam. Hello, Eliana.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon. Yes, that's right. Vietnam faced criticism Wednesday from the United States and rights groups after jailing 3 pro-democracy bloggers weeks ahead of the Communist government's Party Congress. The run-up to a leadership transition later this month is a particularly tense period for the state as candidates jostle for power behind closed doors. In recent months, the authoritarian regime has stepped up its crackdown on dissent and has arrested numerous critics. At a quick trial Tuesday in Ho Chi Minh City, 3 critics of the state who belong to the outlawed Independent Journalist Association of Vietnam, or the IJAV, were sentenced to jail for making and disseminating information against Vietnam. High-profile writer Pham Chi Dung, 54, founding member and president of the IJAV, was jailed for 15 years, while military veteran Nguyen Tuong Tuy, 69, was sentenced to 11 years. A younger member of the group, Le Hu Minh Thuan, was also handed an 11-year term. The United States, which despite war memories has a warming relationship with Vietnam, led by shared concerns on China, said it was disappointed by the sentences. These harsh sentences are the latest in a worrisome trend of arrests and convictions aimed at Vietnamese citizens exercising rights enshrined in Vietnam's constitution, a State Department spokesperson said in Washington. We urge the Vietnamese government to ensure its actions are consistent with the human rights provisions of its constitution and its international obligations and commitments. The imprisoned trio are well known for calling for greater democracy in Vietnam. Lawyer Nguyen Van Mien told AFP they admitted writing articles to support freedom of speech and other democratic rights, but denied spreading information against the communist regime. According to the court's verdict cited by state-run media, the three had regularly been in contact with regime opponents prior to their arrests in late 2019 and mid-2020. IJEV leader Dung had written articles for foreign media agencies with the purpose of changing Vietnam's political system, it said. The defendants' behavior posed a danger to society, causing separation in social unity and people, it added. Amnesty International's Deputy Regional Director, Emerlyn Hill, said the sentences show the depths of Vietnam's censorship, even by its own deeply repressive standards. These journalists' only crime was daring to discuss politics and other matters of public interest, she said. Radio Free Asia, the U.S. government-funded broadcaster, where Thuy contributed commentary, called for his immediate release. The harsh sentencing of Thuy and two other independent journalists is a blatant assault on basic freedoms and flies in the face of freedom of expression enshrined in Vietnam's constitution, Radio Free Asia President Stephen Yates said. There are more than 170 prisoners of conscience currently imprisoned in Vietnam, according to Amnesty. In December, writer and poet Tran Duc Tac was sentenced to 12 years for his articles critical of the government posted on Facebook, nearly a decade after being released from prison for a similar offense. The Communist Party Congress will take place from January 25 to February 2 in Hanoi. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you very much, Eliana, for all your updates there in Vietnam. Looking forward to more, and we'll see you back tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Alma, reporting live from Da Nang, Vietnam. This is Eliana Faith-Chan, and we live in interesting times.
In Indonesia, the country will begin its nationwide COVID-19 mass vaccination program on January 13. The country's health minister said on Tuesday, January 5, as the world's fourth most populous country battles the worst coronavirus outbreak in Southeast Asia. Budha Gunadi Sadikin said in a statement that President Joko Widodo said to be given the first shot, while vaccinations in other regions will start in the following 2 days. Sinovac, along with the Indonesia state-owned drug maker Bio Farma, is overseeing late-stage clinical trials in the province of West Java. Early results from CoronaVac late-stage trials show that it was 91.25% effective, while researchers in Brazil have said it was more than 50% effective, though full results were yet to be released at the company's request. The drug agency BPOM has previously said it hoped emergency use authorization would be granted once interim data from clinical trials in Indonesia, Brazil, and Turkey was studied.
In Brunei, the country recorded no new COVID-19 cases yesterday, maintaining the national tally of confirmed number of infections at 172. 20 active cases are receiving treatment at the National Isolation Center in the Tutong district. The latest developments on coronavirus in the country were shared by the Ministry of Health in a statement yesterday. Meanwhile, the MOH also took 160 samples for SARS-CoV-2 testing in the past 24 hours and carried out 84,080 tests since January of 2020. There have been 31 imported cases since the last local case was reported 244 days ago, while 590 individuals are undergoing mandatory self-isolation at government monitoring centers after arriving from abroad, while 10,568 completed self-isolation since March of last year.
Hey there, Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Chito, Rica, Prende! Piling di ko kakayanin pa. Nalaman kong wala ng pag-ibig sa akin. Di kayang mag-isa. Gusto Apat na pinakabagong mga awit ang kakasa sa hamon ng kompetisyon. Sino ang mamamayagpag sa kantahan upang makuha ang unang pwesto para sa ating monthly finals? Ito ang biggest talent competition on Philippine TV and online. Ito po ang Taging Sinagaling Part 2 Singing Edition.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business every Saturday from 5 to 6 p.m. Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back. The island nation of Maldives has been praised for its steps on climate change. Joining us live from Maldives, here's Steffi Dewan. Hello, Steph.
Hi, Alma. Good afternoon. Yes, that's the latest news for today. Patricia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, addressed a letter to the Maldivian government complimenting the archipelago's nationally determined contribution, submitted as a country is ratifying the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. According to the Ministry of Environment, Maldives received praise for updating the NDC even with the challenges posed by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Maldives submitted its initial action plan to minimize the consequences of climate change in 2015. This year's NDC highlighted the progress made in achieving the goals set in 2015 and included additional objectives for the future. In the latest NDC, Maldives listed down its aim to produce 15% of electricity through renewable methods, generate electricity using liquefied natural gas, increase the quality of electricity production to minimize energy wastage, producing 8 megawatts of energy from organic waste in industrial island, Silapushi, and 1.5 megawatts of energy similarly in Adu Atoll. Moreover, the NDC stated that Maldives will require all vehicles to be up to a certain standard to ensure that harmful emissions are reduced. In addition to increasing hybrid vehicles, the island nation aims to cut down its emissions by 26% by 2030 as well. Referring to Maldives' aim to greatly cut down emissions, Espinosa commended the island nation's target to achieve net zero emissions by the year 2030. The Environment Ministry reiterated that work was underway to achieve this target. As President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih has vowed at several national and international podiums. Although President Solih has declared Maldives' commitment to achieving net zero emissions by 2030 with international support, it is of note that little has been done overall to reduce emissions till date. The government, state bank, and local council need to show specific leniences over vehicular import, low installment and low score vehicles, and stalling of introducing subsidiaries or removing fees for these seeking renewable energy options. The generally lackluster road controls, particularly in capital Malé, also contribute to emissions rounded out with a poor record of enforcement. The Maldivian Parliament declared a climate emergency in February 2019. However, despite Maldives' stance in the international arena, including advocacy at the COP summits and the country's call to criminalize ecocide at the International Criminal Court, the government faces criticism from environmental activists and NGOs over continuing to reclaim land and lagoon areas for development purposes, often in contrast with the ruling party's own electoral pledges. Despite the state's various pledges to tackle imminent threats to the environment, local NGOs, movements, and advocacies have accused the government of failing to walk the talk and live up to the electoral pledges made with respect to sustainable development and halting environmental degradation. And that's my quick update from all this. Back to you, Alma.
All right, thank you very much, Steffi. Looking forward to more updates coming out of Maldives. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Maldives. This is Steffi Bihuan, and we live in interesting times.
The Malaysian Meteorological Department, or Met Malaysia, today issued bad and alert weather warnings, with heavy rains expected in several states across the country until tomorrow, according to Bernama report. Met Malaysia, in a statement, said continuous heavy rain is predicted in Kelantan, involving the districts of Pasir Mas, Cheli, Tanah Merah, Machang, Kuala Krai, and Gua Musang. Heavy rains are expected to occur throughout the states of Perlis, Kedah, Penang, and several districts in Perak, namely Carian, Larut, Matang and Selama, Hulu Perak, Kuala Kangsar, and Kinta. Met Malaysia also predicted strong northeastern winds with speed of up to 60 kilometers per hour, with waves reaching 4.5 meters to occur in the waters of Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang, and East Johor during the period. Meanwhile, the Malaysian Meteorological Department, or Met Malaysia, has also dispelled claims that cold weather like in London will hit Malaysia next month. Such claims, which have been circulated on social media, were false and had been spread in 2016 and were reposted, said Met Malaysia. The department explained that the cold weather condition experienced in most areas in Peninsula, especially the East Coast and West Coast, was due to the humid and cloudy weather for several days and the cold winds.
In other news, South Korea will send a delegation to Iran to negotiate the release of a seized oil tanker and its crew, according to Seoul, as an anti-piracy unit arrived in waters near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said Monday it had seized the South Korean-flagged Hankook Chemi, which it said was carrying 7,200 tons of oil chemical products for infringing maritime environmental laws. Seoul's defense ministry said Tuesday a destroyer carrying members of South Korea's anti-piracy unit had arrived in waters near the Strait of Hormuz and was now carrying out a mission to ensure the safety of, quote, our nationals, without giving details. Separately, South Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jong-kun will go ahead with a planned 3-day trip to Tehran early next week, according to his spokesman. According to Iran's central bank governor, Abdul Nasser Hemati, the country has $7 billion of deposits in South Korea that can neither be transferred nor, he said, do we get any returns on, while they ask us for the cost of holding the funds. South Korea's foreign minister Kang Kyung-hwa did not comment on speculation that Iran seized the ship in a bid to pressure Seoul to unlock Iranian assets. The arrested crew were from South Korea, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Myanmar. The Guard said on its website, Sayhap News, without giving further details.
In Myanmar, the stadium once roared with fans during Myanmar's top football games, but now bustles with workers wrapped in protective gear who are battling coronavirus pandemic. Ayeyawadi Center Clinic was hastily built in September when case numbers started to surge in a country with one of the weakest healthcare systems in the world. From the several hundred in mid-August, reported infections have since climbed to nearly 130,000 with more than 2,700 deaths. The new hospital might be makeshift, but it is one of the best equipped in the country, with 1,000 beds and 125 intensive care units, all monitored from a modern control room. Plants and cheery signs wish patients back to full health. The medical workers and volunteers have ping-pong tables to use in breaks and are able to exercise the adjacent football pitch at the Tuwana Stadium. Fewer than 200 patients have died at the center from some 10,000, a survival rate that has meant the hospital and its sister center in Mandalay have become training hubs for medical staff and across the country. Maybe we can say we're winning, Dr. Ted Coco, 30, told AFP after a grueling 12-hour shift layered in protective gear in the stifling heat. But new strains are appearing in other countries and they can come into our country at any time. Numbers of new cases have shown signs of trending downwards, but civilian leader and Aung San Suu Kyi warned against complacency in her New Year's address.
In other news, San Miguel Corp has reached its target of 156 radio frequency identification stations, or RFID, last December 29, as its expressways gear up for cashless toll collections next week. We're no longer seeing long lines at the stations, and we will continue to serve and accommodate all motorists wanting to install their free auto sweep stickers as we approach the January 11 full implementation of cashless toll collection on all expressways set by the government. And even after that, SMC President and Chief Operating Officer Ramon Ang said in a statement on Tuesday, SMC, which operates the STAR, or Southern Tagalog Arterial Road Tollway, South Luzon Expressway or SLEX, Skyway Naiya Expressway, and Tarlac Pangasinan La Union Expressway, said it converted all but one of its 66 dedicated on-site or toll plaza stations into 24/7 stickering stations. It also now operates 9 RFID centers, 18 gas stations, installation sites, 11 local government and land transportation office sites, and 44 mall sites. It also has stickering sites in 3 major transportation terminal hubs, 2 home builders depots, and 3 showrooms. 11 out of 156 installation sites are by appointment to manage traffic congestion in the areas. Mr. Ang said the opening of more off-site stickering stations, including those in malls and government offices, was a key part of the company's strategy to reach more non-regular users of its toll roads, concentrated mostly in the south.
The Philippine ambassador to China, Chito Santoromana, said last week the Chinese government announced that it had given provisional approval for general use of the vaccine made by Sinopharm. He also said Sinopharm and Sinovac of China will seek clearance for emergency use authorization of their COVID-19 vaccines from the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, of the Philippines this week.
Before the New Year weekend, last Thursday, the Chinese government announced that it had granted provisional approval for general use to a vaccine produced by Sinopharm. This is actually a state-owned pharmaceutical company, and its vaccine has been used for emergency use since July, together with Sinovac. Now, Sinopharm and Sinovac have both applied for this general use approval. Sinopharm was the first one to get it last Thursday, but we're in touch with both companies, Sinopharm and Sinovac. Both companies, Sinovac has also told us, the Philippine Embassy here in Beijing, that it is expecting, it has filed for the same application for general use approval, and it expects there will be an announcement by the government sometime this month, most likely around the middle of this month. Ang nangyari ngayon dito is meron ng approval for general use in China ang Sinopharm vaccine. Yung specific vaccine ito, yung ginawa ng China National Biotech Group, CNBG vaccine, no? Yun ang na-approve. Sinovac has a pending application, and they informed us that they expect to hear from the authorities sometime this month, hopefully by the middle of January. The other thing I want to add, our embassy is in touch with these 2 companies, of course, and we try to facilitate their contact with IATF and if there is any information that's needed. We asked them when they will file for EUA sa FDA sa Pilipinas, no? Apparently, their plan right now, according to them, is that they hope to file in the next few days. Sometime this week, they will file their EUA application with FDA in the Philippines.
Ikaw ba ay may natatanging talento sa pagsayaw? Ito na ang pagkakataon mong ipamalas ang inyong galing at manalo ng 2 million pesos. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang online audition ng Tagisan ng Galing Part 2.
Kaya kung ikaw ay 18 to 65 years old,
magpadala na ng audition video sa tagisananggaling@gmail.com or contact Shing sa 0995-880-8004. Narito ang guidelines sa paggawa ng inyong audition videos. You can also visit our Facebook fan page for more information. Sali na at maging bahagi ng pinakamalaki at pinakamalawak na talent competition on Philippine television and online. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2, dito lang sa Net 25.
Citing the alleged use of forced labor, the U.S. announced it has banned the import of palm oil from the Malaysian company Sime Darby Plantation, Berhad. U.S. Customs and Border Protection released a statement saying it has issued a withhold release order allowing it to impound shipments of Sime Darby Plantation's palm oil products made with forced labor. Activists have long claimed that low-paid workers on plantations face abuse and also blame the industry for driving destruction of rainforests to make way for the vast agricultural estates. U.S. Customs and Border Protection said there was evidence Sime Darby workers face abuses, and that includes sexual and physical violence, withholding of their wages, and restrictions on movements. The decision means that all Sime Darby palm oil and palm oil products from Malaysia are barred from entering U.S. ports. Now, this came after anti-trafficking group Liberty petitioned the CBP to block Sime Darby imports over concerns about labor abuse. In a statement, the producer insisted it was committed to combating forced labor and has implemented robust policies to protect their workers' rights and pledged to work with U.S. officials to address their concerns. Palm oil is a common ingredient in items ranging from processed foods to cosmetics. Indonesia and Malaysia are principal exporters of palm oil, the production of which has been blamed for deforestation. The U.S. imported approximately $410 million of crude palm oil from Malaysia in fiscal year 2020, according to a CNN report.
Vietnam on Tuesday suspended flights from countries with cases of new COVID-19 variants. The communist nation, which has won praise for its handling of the pandemic, said its flights from the UK and South Africa would be affected first. The Health and Transport Ministries will later decide if flights from elsewhere need to be banned according to a Prime Minister directive. The two new variants, which are potentially far more infectious versions of the virus, first emerged in the UK and South Africa. COVID cases in Britain have soared in recent weeks, forcing the government to impose tighter restrictions in a desperate attempt to curb infection rates. But Vietnam, with a population of 96 million, has recorded just 1,504 cases and 35 deaths thanks to mass quarantines, extensive contact tracing, and strict controls on movement. Most inbound commercial flights have been suspended since March, but Vietnamese citizens stuck abroad and some foreigners have been allowed to enter.
In Thailand, the country reported 527 new coronavirus cases. Most of them are migrant workers who already were isolated. The government said it was tightening movements of people around the country because of this. Thailand has been struggling with a sudden virus surge after months of hardly any cases of transmission domestically. In an AP report, field hospitals were being set up in parts of 5 provinces, with many cases in the large parts of the country, including the capital Bangkok, and they are now under various lockdown restrictions. And the government said it will additionally restrict travel between virus-hit provinces to goods, cargo, and necessary travel, and they will also set up checkpoints on some roads. An outbreak last month at a massive seafood market has spiraled into a resurgence. Bars and nightclubs, boxing stadiums, cockfighting rings, and massage parlors, as well as beauty salons and gyms, will be among a slew of businesses that are affected. The capital also announced last Friday that public schools would be closed for 2 weeks, while more than a dozen virus checkpoints are being set up across the city. Nationwide, restrictions and closures are expected to go into effect from January 4 to February 1. allowing a 2-day grace period for business owners to prepare. Malls and department stores remain open with social distancing required, and indoor dining at restaurants is allowed only until 9 p.m. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha implored people to stay home.
Coronavirus has wrought havoc across the world, but for Thailand's sea gypsies, it has brought welcome despite from the threat of mass tourism. Since the pandemic began, life has been easier for Sanan Changnam and his people. There's an abundance of fish to eat, and real estate projects on their ancestral land in tourist hotspots of Phuket have come to stand still. Let's watch this.
มีพวกอุทยานพวกนักท่องเที่ยวด้วยทำให้เราไม่มีการจะทำหรือว่ามันบีบพวกเราแล้วก็มาหากินก็แคบ
มีความกระทบเพราะว่าเขาจะสมมติว่าเส้นทางที่เราจะมาทำพิธีกรรมนี้เขาจะปิดไม่ให้เข้าแล้วก็ที่ท่าเทียบเรือที่เราเทียบเรืออยู่ประจำเนี่ยเขาบอกว่าเขาจะปิดแล้วจะไม่ให้เข้าเนี่ยมันมีความกระทบต่อชุมชนมีมากครับ
เราเคยคุยกับชาวเลบางคนนะคะแล้วเขาก็บอกว่า
ชาวบ้านยืนยันว่าบรรพบุรุษเราอยู่มาตั้งหลายร้อยปีแล้วเป็นผู้บุกเบิกของเกาะภูเก็ตแล้วจะมีนายทุนมาขับไล่เนี่ยชาวบ้านก็ไม่ยอมเพราะว่าเราอยู่มาก่อน
Meanwhile, drought is an ever-present threat in Southeast Asia, especially to the region's poorest and most vulnerable people. Compared with other disaster, droughts are more predictable, yet policy responses still tend to be largely reactive. Here's what ASEAN is doing.
Drought can be devastating. It can ravage agriculture and the environment and impact both villages and cities. It can lead to disaster. It can affect an entire region. Southeast Asia has endured 2 severe droughts in the last 5 years, impacting about 70% of the region's land area and 60% of its people. Up to 1/4 of the region's population live in a drought hotspot. With climate change on track to create a warmer world, more droughts like these are on the horizon. We need to be ready for the dry years ahead. Working with the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ASEAN is preparing against this intensifying threat of drought. A joint ESCAP and ASEAN report, Ready for the Dry Years, recommends that Southeast Asian policymakers build resilience to drought by focusing on 3 key policy areas. 1. Reduce and prevent droughts from occurring. 2. Prepare and respond to droughts when they happen. And 3. Restore and recover after a drought has passed. Of course, Southeast Asia is currently besieged by another crisis, the COVID-19 pandemic. But drought adaptation strategies can underpin and reinforce many COVID-19 recovery plans. The world is warming, the climate is changing, and the incidence and severity of drought will increase in the future. ASEAN members must build collective, adaptive, and long-term drought policies to meet this challenge. Together, we can be ready for the dry years.
Overseas Filipino workers in Canada stay positive by sharing Fight Song Challenge. Here's Marjorie Quintas for the report.
Drought can...
In the year of 2020, several lockdowns have been imposed, and we all try to do something from home. But how awesome can it be when you're locked down with your colleagues that have now become your friends and family?
A group of Filipino workers came to Vernon in British Columbia. They lived together, worked together, spent the holidays together. They made some vlogs to show the beauty of Canada. Everything was going well until COVID happened. To encourage fast food workers to show up for work, even if they fear COVID-19, they dance to the tune of Fight Song. And they were joined by workers from other provinces in Canada. This performance became viral, that it got over 1,000 shares and made it to the news in British Columbia at that week. When the government of Canada allowed for fast food restaurants to stay open, this group of friends showed everybody that life must go on and that you gotta go to work every day, regardless of the fear for COVID-19. To stay positive and happy, they started dancing just whenever they get the opportunity. They dance at work, they dance at home, and they dance all together every day. So you gotta watch all of these.
Legal.
Wipe it down.
And because they live together and are working together, they were able to spend a great summer without violating social distancing restrictions. It is indeed true that friends are family we choose.
So for 2021, this group of friends would like to challenge everyone out there to submit their story of friendship and a dance, the climb song dance that they prepared in the snow.
They feel lost with no direction. Our faith is shaking. But I gotta get done. I keep my head held high. There's always gonna be another mountain. I'm always gonna make it move. Always gonna be an uphill battle. Sometimes I'm gonna have to live. Ain't about how fast I get there. Ain't about what's waiting on the other side. It's a climb.
In Canada, this is Marjorie Quintos. We live in interesting times.
All right. Thank you, Esther, for your time. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Alma. It's my pleasure. And that's the latest news around ASEAN. Thank you all for watching. From ABC Thailand Bureau, this is Esther Adanga, and we live in interesting times.
Indeed, and I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back tomorrow. We live in interesting times.